political commentator Briahna Joy Gray, who is also a Bernie Sanders former press secretary, has been fired from the Hill network, this just days after rolling her eyes while interviewing the sister of an Israeli woman taken hostage by Hamas terrorists on October 7th. Not showing any regret of her poor manners and attitude, Gray wrote on social platform X, "It's finally happened. The Hill has fired me. There should be no doubt that the rising Hill has a clear pattern of suppressing speech, particularly when it's critical of the state of Israel." Let's have a look at the embarrassing interview.
Thank you, me too. And I really hope that you specifically will believe women when they say that they got hurt.
All right, thanks for joining. Stick around, more Rising coming up next.
Yes, let's welcome now journalist and activist Blake Flayton joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you very much for being with us, Blake.
Thanks for having me.
So even for the standards of much of the leftist media in America these days, this sort of behavior towards a sister of a hostage is obviously not accepted.
It's definitely not accepted, and I would say that it shows a clear and transparent grievance, not just with Israel, but with the thousands, if not millions and millions of Jews around the world who since October 7th have been trying to alert the world to the crimes that Hamas committed on October 7th, the massacre, the worst since the Holocaust. There have been campaigns, there have been advocacy organizations and trips to Israel, et cetera, et cetera. And it just shows the utter contempt and grievance with that infrastructure that is trying to shed light on what really happened to the Jewish people just 8 months ago.
And how prevalent do you feel are such views like the ones of this commentator of the conflict among American journalists? How do you see that from viewing much of the American media these days?
So what we're seeing from the American media today, and not only the American media, but the American political establishment and the academy and large parts of the culture, all the way up to Hollywood and down to just trivial social media conversations, is Corbynization. And what I mean by Corbynization is the phenomenon that happened in the UK when Jeremy Corbyn was vying for first leader of the Labour Party and then Prime Minister. And you can read all about that process and what happened in this book, Contemporary Left Anti-Semitism by David Hirsch. It really is a foundational text for anybody who's looking to have a better understanding of left-wing anti-Semitism, because David Hirsch, a sociologist in Britain, spells out in the book something that is blowing up in America and indeed in the West, and has been for quite a while, but specifically since October 7th. And that is defending oneself against accusations of anti-Semitism with the quote, "I was only criticizing Israel," or "This is just criticism of Israel that you are trying to silence." And of course, this is exactly what Briahna Joy Gray did after her firing from the Hill yesterday. And basically what this does is when someone says something anti-Semitic and responds by saying, "I was just criticizing Israel," it accomplishes two things. Yeah. The first thing is it turns the conversation away from the anti-Semitic behavior. So that can include demonizing Israel, saying it has no right to exist, saying that its foundation was the worst human rights atrocity ever recorded. And Briahna Joy Gray has a history of making these comments. She's made it very clear that she does not recognize the Jewish people as a legitimate people, and therefore Israel is not a legitimate country. It distracts from those anti-Semitic comments and turns it into a conversation about Israeli government policy and what Israel is doing on the ground, when, especially in this case, when Briahna rolled her eyes when speaking to a family member of a hostage, it really hasn't much to do with particular things in the Israeli political scene that you disagree with. The second thing is it turns the accusation around and it pinpoints on the Jew an accusation of racism or bigotry, right-wing reactionary type politics, supporting genocide, apartheid, colonialism, racism, all of the things that we know to be evil. And by doing so, it absolves the person of blame in usually left-wing progressive circles and sort of confirms their previous anti-Semitic priors and comments by putting the blame on the Jewish people, or really anybody who takes offense to anti-Semitism and points the finger at them instead. So this is a very well documented, as I said, there's a whole book about it, a very well documented trope phenomenon, and it has come to the West, unfortunately, and we've seen it very prominently in America since October 7th.
Yeah, we saw other prominent commentators and actors like Susan Sarandon and others in support, basically, of the Palestinian cause as it was used by Hamas on October 7th. Black Flayton, thank you very much for being with us today. And